Okay, good evening. Today is Wednesday and it is April the 8th, 2020, and welcome to Introduction to Corrections. My name is Professor Richard Wright. Uh, Most of you don't know me because this is probably your early entry into the program. You'll probably get to know me more because I teach not only this, but I also teach drugs and crime. I teach uh, Introduction to Criminal Law. I teach contemporary issues in criminal justice. I teach in the bachelor program evidence and constitutional law, realities in criminal justice. I teach a lot of different things. And so you're going to learn some things about me tonight. Tonight's lecture will go a little longer than our normal weekly lectures. I made you aware of that earlier, but I hope you guys are hanging in there with this pandemic that's taking place all over the country. And those of you who are on the call, I appreciate you being here. Let me know what states you're from. Type in the chat box and I'll see that. What states are you guys from? I'm here in Illinois. What states are you from? Northern Illinois. Okay. Northern Illinois. Where else? What's Pennsylvania? Oh, okay. Minnesota. Where else? Minnesota. Make sure that you do so not privately, but so that everyone can see it. Also from Illinois. Okay. And any other states? When you say Illinois, Northern Illinois, where's northern? What part of where's Northern Illinois? What town in Northern Illinois? Oh, small town outside of Rockford. Yeah, I do know a lot of the towns outside of Rockford. Um, and let's see, I used to be the state program coordinator for the School of Justice Studies, and I had to travel to Rockford. Let's see, Rockford is in what county is that? I know the name of it, I just can't think of it. What helped me with the name of the county? Winnebago. Yeah, I knew it was named after uh, um, a a vehicle, not a vehicle, but more like a what is that? A camp house or something like Winnebago. But yeah, I know that campus, Rockford, very well, right there on State Street in the Chase Bank building. And I spent many hours there. I see other people, Illinois. Let's see, I think I see Minnesota. I'm familiar with Minnesota. Pennsylvania. Okay. I see Illinois, another person in Illinois, that's Asia Jones. I think your area is the Chicago area, right? I think I recall seeing that in the student lounge. You're from the Chicago area, I think, right? All right. Well, I'm from the Chicago area, but I'm from Chicago, but I'm actually physically located now in Plainfield. And so that's where I've been for a little while. Yes. Okay. All right. Uh, yeah, Chicago area. So yeah, I was South Side, well, original West Side Chicago, then South Side of Chicago, and for a minute lived on the North Side. Well, when I went to Northwestern Law School, which is downtown Chicago. So, yep. Well, anyway, welcome to class, everybody, and I hope that you guys are staying safe. All the states that I see here, I think have stay-at-home orders. I think Pennsylvania does. I'm almost sure. I'm probably 90% sure that Pennsylvania does. I don't recall on my list, but believe it or not, there's a state that's adjacent to us, that's just west of us. Uh, yeah, until May or later. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think that more realistically that even the jurisdictions like ours is up to the 30th of this month, but I think that it's going to be more like June or July. This is really a devastating thing. I tell people all the time, I said that this is like nothing of anything that we have faced. And you guys are much younger than me. I'm 69 years old, and I've seen a lot of things, heard a lot of things. I was around when September the 11th took place. I remember Hurricane Katrina, but this is pandemic. This is hurt all over the world. There's no place, you know. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's and actually you're staying safe by staying at home. Um, we now wear masks if we go out. My wife went out earlier today, you know, so but it's okay with me. I find myself I've been teaching online for a while, so I've been anywhere I wanted to go, traveling wise, Florida. I've been to you know, yeah, yeah, I know. uh, Going crazy. Yeah, because you feel like you're under house arrest. If I remember many of my clients, not many, but some of my clients ended up with house arrest, and you know now I know what they felt like in terms of it. But you know what though? It's for our good. I am a pastor of a church. Our church is even uh, at home now, and you know, so I'm going to. Oh, that reminds me, I got to mute on entry everything. Stop that, so we can not be entry. Okay, good. So anyway, yeah. So now we have what happened? Mute on entry. So I gotta mute everybody. Okay. So everybody, let's see, I gotta mute this one. Yep. So I did. I just muted somebody. They were just on a few minutes ago. If you don't have yourself muted, then I can hear everything that goes on in there. If you say anything, I had a person who didn't mute themselves one time, and there was a big argument going on in the background. It wasn't them, but um, we found out that it was somebody in their family. So everybody in the class heard it. But anyway, so let's get started here. We got quite a bit of information to cover, and I'm going to uh, try to take my time to go through this because there's quite a bit for you guys to digest. This page that you're looking at right now, let me move this. I don't want to make it bigger, I just want to move it. Uh, there we go. Let's just move this right up here for now. Okay, so here at the right, the first thing that you should see on the page, other than your calendar tab and your resources tab, which we're going to go to in a few minutes, is your instructor information. Now there's some very, very, very important information in that one little box. First thing is my name, a picture that kind of still the way I look now. I haven't been able to get out to the barber shop, so uh, but anyway, I'm still close to that. My phone number there, you'll see that 630-660-8480. That is this number right here, right in my hand here. This is my Note 8 phone that will be able to receive phone calls, receive text messages, and emails any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Now, if you email me, text me, or call me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day, if you do it the 25th hour of the day, I will not get it. I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. But the truth of the matter is that you will discover and learn that I am fair, I am firm, and I'm consistent. You're going to learn that I'm very empathetic, but I also appreciate and respect ethical, professional operations from students. And I don't require that students agree with things that I say, but if you can't agree with me, at least appreciate the fact that what I am telling you is something that will enhance your quality of life. That is my goal. You're paying very good money to get a good education. And I like to think that I'm a pretty good professor. Many students who have had me in the past, if you talk to any, they say, "Oh yeah, he's all those things that he says he is," and is with students. I'm with many of my students even years after I've been teaching them, helping them out to further their careers. And so that's just how I am. So it's very, very, very important. Now, please, whenever you email me, or rather text me, should I say, please include your name and the course that you're in. And then, of course, give me details about what it is that you're trying to find out. And oftentimes you will find out that I will respond to a text message with a call back to you. So if you're at work and you do it, it's okay. And then I'll call back, and sometimes students say I can't answer because I'm at work, and they'll reach back to me later because I like to talk to students. I love communication. At my age, 69 years old, I understand that a lot of students like to text and all of that, but no, give me, we can, let me put it like this. Texting me and emailing me is probably a way to slow down getting the answers to your questions. But if you call me and talk to me, then we can have a contemporaneous discussion. Just like I encourage students to come to the live lectures. Students who don't come to the live lectures are going to realize something that just happened. And I learned this by my class I teach on Mondays, that when I get ready to send out the recording, that it's not available to me sometimes until 24 hours later. So I can't even send it out to the students. So in this case, it's very, very, very important because I talk about things for the whole course uh, for the next 5.5 weeks. So anyway, very important that you understand rubrics. You see, I have that highlighted there. There's a reason for that, because rubrics is how you're going to get your grades. Now, you're going to have to really pay close attention to these rubrics. I'm going to show you what they look like in a little bit. They're going to be included in your grade book, and they're going to be included in each assignment. But you're going to have to make sure that you satisfy the requirements for each of the sections in order to move um, from proficient to emerging. And one of the big issues that students are going to face is APA. APA. If you don't understand APA, you're going to have trouble not just with me, but you're going to have trouble with most of us professors. The reason is because of the fact that it is a prelude to academic integrity. It is also a prelude to something that you may have to do, even if it's not APA, but the habit of citing sources and providing reference pages, reference information is very important. When I was in school, we used to have to do things called footnotes. They were more tedious than APA. And APA has to do with running heads, which, by the way, APA is undergoing some changes. We're going to be going to uh, the 7th edition of APA, but we have had sessions this past week or so with Faculty Development Week, where we have asked them to delay it with this corona and the pandemic creating enough problems. We don't want to throw a brand new APA at people, and or we'll be very, 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 how should I say, lax about how we grade, but not on some key things in APA, like citations in the body and references at the end, like the cover page and having it properly formatted, like having Roman 12 as your font. So we're not going to be letting that go, but we will be very flexible with it. But we encourage you, and you're going to see a lot about this on your course homepage and the resources tab that I'm going to go to in a minute to help you with APA. And then critical thinking is very important. I'm going to introduce that to you in a little bit. It's one of our transferable skills that I'll be talking about, which the school has determined are skills that employers are looking for with prospective candidates for jobs and positions. And we are going to talk about how that applies in school, and you want to become a critical thinker in this day and time. My natural inclination is to be a critical thinker, because those of you who know about me from looking at the student lounge, you know that I am a retired lawyer and I went to law school. And so therefore I am a natural critical thinker. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. And so these are some issues that are very, 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 very important. So I'm going to move along. And then this reminds you to, it tells you that you are required to conduct research for all papers. That means the sole source cannot be the textbook. Now, speaking of that, you know what the textbook is, American Corrections. You also received from me an email with the PowerPoints, which I will not be using in the lectures. They would slow me down. And besides, you already have the PowerPoints, so I don't teach off of PowerPoints. I teach off of the information that's in the module. I teach off of professional experience, and I teach off of other information that I've gathered that will benefit and help you guys to be successful in this classroom. But the textbook, try to lean not heavily on the textbook, because we want you to get into the habit. When you start talking about one of the transferable skills of information literacy, you'll discover that we want you to learn how to have credible resources to support your statements. And so we encourage research. You'll lose 2 points. Now that's not in your rubric, but you'll lose 2 points if you don't conduct research. That is, if your paper appears to be based on sources from the textbook and no other sources included. And I will warn you too that if it's too heavily with the textbook. Again, the textbook is a source that's already been researched. It's a source to help you study and prepare and understand the materials in the week module, but we want you to launch out into finding out other information that, so in other words, the textbook is a starting point. APA, I already talked about that. you'll lose a point if you don't provide the cover sheet as part of it. And then these are some helpful resources that you can go to and find yourself. One of the resources that I do want to bring to you is the guides to library and learning. So let me just click on this for a minute, and let's move that over there. And you see in here, click on a word and it helps you. It helps you with everything from APA. So if you clicked on APA, it'll open up a toolkit and some other information, plenty of resources, short videos to help you with APA. If you clicked on Grammarly, I encourage you to run all of your papers through Grammarly. You each have a Grammarly student account here at the school, and this tells you how to set it up. And it says make sure you use your Rasmussen email. If you use the email, you won't need to enter the access code. But this is how, if you use without your other email, you'd have to use this code. But don't go put yourself through that. Just go ahead and use your Rasmussen email. It even tells you that. Be sure to sign up using your Rasmussen student email. And you know what that is. That's your first name, dot your last name, and then it says SMail, which stands for student mail, and then at rasmussen.edu. So you want to make sure that you use that. And make sure that you check the box for plagiarism when you do so. And it tells you how to use Grammarly and everything. So very, very, very important tool, because when you get Grammarly hits, and I will be very, very flexible with you in your first time that it hits you. But if it hits you a second time, then it's going to be a problem. How do I know? Well, I have hundreds of students. I have 3 classes that I'm teaching term 1. And then I have one class that goes all the way through. It's 11-week class. It's one of the few 11-week classes that we still have. But I will be able to keep up with that. And then there are tutorials that can help you. You need to check out your Noodle tools. You need to be familiar with all of these things. And as a new student, I highly recommend clicking on this and looking at this, so it can help you to understand. And some of this stuff, you know, is very fundamental. It's not just to your coursework, but it helps you to understand. Talks about APA, if you know, talks about tutoring and the writing lab and things of that nature. And you want to make sure that you learn about these. It even talks about Grammarly that checks spelling, grammar, mechanics, and plagiarism issue. So this is just one of the tools. So you begin to see that we have plenty of things in there. If you have technical help you need 24/7, 365 and 1/4 days of the year is personal support. And then there is the information and number there, but you can disregard that, because if you scroll down to any page at the bottom of your area, let's see, I don't think it's okay. It's not in the Library and Learning Center, but when we go back to the course page, let's show you. If you go back to any page at the bottom, you'll see it. Rasmussen Personal Support in red, 866-693-2211, and you can call them with technical issues that you might have. And so then this is information about tutoring. These are some articles that can help you, and I'm not going to go through them, but you want to make sure that you take these documents and download them. The one you probably don't have to worry about is the annotated bibliography right now, but these other four definitely beyond the textbook helps you to go beyond what I talked about earlier. Analytical tips, this gets to the critical skills, information literacy. It's going to be talking about one of our transferable skills, helping you to be able to find credible resources, and then how to reference your materials in criminal justice. There's a critical thinking video to help you, and you can copy and paste this video into your browser at the top, and then you can look at it yourself. It's a very short video, and it helps you to understand that you will actually at some point have a course on critical thinking that you are required to take before you leave this school. Rubrics are located in each weekly assignment and the course projects, and I'm gonna show you those, and then it's also in your grade book, but you won't see it in your grade book until after you complete the assignment. The discussion posts, there's a discussion rubric, which is kind of similar to the rubric that we have, but it explains that you get 50% for your first post, and you want to make sure and that you get the highest number of points. You want to be in A. This is how you want to satisfy all the requirements in A. Then you get down here, no post, or the post is rude or abusive, or if it's after the week when the discussion period has ended, you'll end up with an F. Poorly written posts, little or no effort to engage in the discussion question, little short answers and things like that. So you're going to end up, and you'll end up losing points. And so it's the same thing dealing with the response. You're required to at least respond to at least one post every week. And we're going to talk about the scheduling in that. So I just wanted to share that. That's the rubric, and it's pretty generic. This is how you came here. This is the classroom that I'm in every Wednesday, and it began tonight, and then next week all the way through to week 5. There is no week 6 lecture. Okay, so week 5 will be our very last lecture, which I'll talk about what comes up in week 6. And that live lecture for week 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be roughly 8:30 to 9:30, or close to that time, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, and begin next Wednesday, April the 15th. Now you're going to be required to attend the lectures or listen to the archive and then provide me with the key word. Even if you are in the live lecture, you still need to provide the keyword in the drop-down box for assignments. You'll see that as I share that with you in just a few minutes. All right. And then the recordings, every week I will post the link. And what I do with my recordings is I convert them to, well, they're already MP4s now. They changed it, which is good. And so once I do get them and they're available to me, I can get them out really fast, but I have to get them first. Is that you'll see the link in here, as well as I will email it to you. So you will see that contemporaneously. Okay, so I've kind of talked about this already. The writing process is included in your resources tab, which you already know about there. And so I want to call your attention to the welcome announcement that I sent out to you. And be sure to understand that each of these points, announcements, student lounge, course mail, is syllabus, calendar, general course questions, and the resources tab. The report tab is something that I won't use, but you use to get to your grades. And then it provides you with some other information, then reminds you about this lecture that's taking place right now, and so forth. So I encourage you to see this. This will be up the whole course. So it'll be on the course homepage. So you'll be able to do it. So I'm not going to go through each thing. I am going to say to you, though, that when we communicate, you communicate with me. When I talked about email, I have a personal email. I have a student. I have a Rasmussen email. And you can see both of them on the in the student lounge on that page. If you look down there at the bottom of the information that I give you, and then the syllabus, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the calendar. Now, the general course question section is where you can post a question. Anybody, including you guys, can answer the questions. Do not, I repeat, do not put personal information in there because everybody will see it. If you're going to need to reach me with personal information, send it through course mail to me, or either send it to my um, Rasmussen email outside of course mail. Okay, just to show you what I'm talking about, let's go to discussions and student lounge. See, some of you have posted things in there and shows who has, and I've responded to several of you. But my welcome post is the one I was talking about, where you see that huge mug shot of me and my family. That's at least part of my family. These are the four that live with me at the moment. And then that's me getting my law degree when I was 28 years old. So it's coming up on 44 years this year. And then this is a little mnemonic that I been using since the 80s to help people. And it just happens to spell lawyers, but every one of you, regardless of what you want to be, will utilize these letters in here. And then when I said about my email address, here's my Rasmussen email. Outside of the two, you'll see Richard.Wright2, or you can use this one without the two. This is my personal email here. And then again, this is my office. Hardly ever use that. I'm hardly ever there, and I'm not there at all now, but I'm hardly ever there because I teach online. This is the number that you have for call and text. And, so I appreciate everything that you guys are saying in here as well. So that helps us to get to know each other. And then the other thing I want to point out is the general course question. There are none, but you can post a general course question and it tells you your faculty member will respond so that the entire class can benefit. If you know the answer to a question, you can also post the answer. If you have questions of personal nature, please email them to me directly. I already told you that. All right. As you know, this week you do not have a discussion post. One student already found out. Matter of fact, I see the number 1 in there. That's her discussion post for next week. This is a course. It used to be 11 weeks, and when it was 11 weeks, it had discussion posts every week. But this one, when they redid it, we have weeks 2 through 5, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. And when we get down to 5, we'll talk about that. Oh, okay, there's 6. So it's 2 through 6, I should say. All right. So you'll have one the last week, but you won't have one week 1. So that's how discussions operate. Okay. Let's take a look at the syllabus before we get to the week's announcement. As you can see, the syllabus contains my name and then once again my phone number. Then see, this is my Rasmussen email. You see the 2 in there. If you didn't put the 2 in there, and it would still get to me at rasmussen.edu. This is a reminder of something that you already know. That's on your course homepage. This talks about your textbook. It tells you how long this term lasts. It says that this term, uh, your assignments are due Sunday. It says midnight, but it's 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then, except the final week, the last day of class, which I will share that with you when we get to the course calendar. So that's how this started. So Sunday midnight. Well, Professor, we didn't start until uh, Monday, right? Yeah, but it's saying when your assignments are due, which is this coming Sunday. That's coming up. All right, that's what it's referring to when it says, and and your weekly discussions. I already kind of talked about that a little bit. Um, you read this over. I don't want brief details. It says each week contain a forum. You're expected to post a thoughtful, detailed response. I already showed you about the rubric. And yes or no, I agree or disagree is not adequate. You will get dinged and get zeros for that. And post with your responses. Also, you will see sometimes what we call Professor Wright's posts. You can comment about those as well. And by the way, don't worry about disagreeing with me. I don't care. Just support your position if you're going to disagree. Because there are times when students share perspectives, which is fine. That's how change comes about. And as a lawyer, I totally get when someone wants to challenge the law. And so it takes someone to challenge the law before there's changes. And so what I am saying is that you can respectfully present your own position. And if I see something I might disagree with you, I'm not going to shoot you down. And remember to exercise courtesy when responding to somebody else's post. And again, here's your post starting with week 1, due Tuesday night, which was last night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then your reply post due this Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then all the way through, same thing until you get to week 6, the last day of class. That's when your initial and reply posts will be due the last day of class. We'll see that in a minute. All right. So it tells you term 1 start July, October, January, and April. So we're in April. So that's when we start our spring. All right. Okay. Then here are your requirements. You have readings, you have discussion assignments, you have written assignments, which we're going to talk about. And then there will be 6 quizzes. Each quiz contains multiple choice, true and false questions. I'm going to tell you up front, if you take the quiz, recommend you take the quiz after you've done the reading, after you've studied. You cannot have notes there uh, for the quiz. It is very, 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 very important that you understand and follow the instructions. Academic integrity will be applicable when you take the quiz, and you will see that. Very important, you'll see about this. And then live sessions, we already kind of talked about that. So look at it breaks down, and it shows you that your discussions are 150 points, or almost 1/4 of your grade. Your written assignments are almost 50% of your grade. So if you look at these two together and you add that together, then you got 68% of your grade with these 2 items here. See, the quizzes fall in next. That's why it's very important. Then your live classrooms, 30 points, because you get 5 points for each lecture. Okay, or rather no, 6 points, I'm sorry, 6 points, because of the fact that there are 5 lectures, not 6 lectures in this class. So you want to get a total of 628 to get 100%. Now, I'm going to make this announcement now. Below this 80 percentile, which is B minus, up to 100%, and I have had several students to get 100%. That's because they listen to what I'm saying and they follow what I'm saying. And then if they need some clarification, they will reach out to me. I don't care how many times, Professor, I just didn't want to keep bugging you. You bug me if I see your grades are not going too well. I want you to make sure that you get your grades maxed. Because when you get ready to go get a job, trust me, A and B students, even though sometimes employers might not deal with the grades, but guess what? Grades kind of an indicator of how well you follow instructions, how well you're able to complete a task according to the requirements, which is the same thing, say it again. So important. So I work with A and B students. I don't work with C and below students. You can do that all by yourself. So do not ask me, what do I need to do to get a C or a D? And you definitely don't have to ask me what you need to do to get an F. So the point of the matter is that you want to make sure, okay, that you meet these requirements. And then these are things that I do. Now, the transferable skills. Transferable skills, as an institution, we have these 6. Now, I want to go back for a minute just on the transferable skills. Then I'm going to come back to that. I want to take you to the course home, and then I want to take you to 2 things. I want to go to resources, and I want to share with you this video, but first I want to talk about the transferable skills. And here we are. Let's move this. I'm gonna have to keep moving this thing around. Oops, I didn't mean to make that bigger. Let's move these. Okay, let's move that down there. Okay, so now what are the transferable skills? You're going to hear this over and over and over. You're going to include it in your operation in the school, and you're going to be so much, it's going to be like breathing. And one of the most important ones to me, as I've already shared, is critical thinking. And the definition of critical thinking is what it says here: improving thinking, problem solving, applying intellectual standards, clarity, so forth. Basically, what we want you to do is use this gray matter in terms of completing your assignments. Be able to think outside the box, be able to be creative, but also supportive at the same time of what your statements are. So critical thinking, digital fluency, employing and understanding digital tools, recognizing and understanding we are in a society where everything is digital, and including on this device that I have in my hand that I'm showing you. It's my cell phone. I'm an Android person. Most of you young guys are Apple people, but I love my Android, and it has everything in here, including my textbooks that I utilize in order to teach classes. But I have learned to operate this as a 69-year-old man, give you a clear perspective throughout my whole education, primarily with my bachelor's, my law school, and even with my seminary training. I didn't rely upon digital fluency. I had the old-fashioned books. When I graduated from Northwestern University School of Law, as you discovered already, 1978, there was no digital stuff. We had old-fashioned books. But now I am very proficient. You have tools of research. You have Google. Be very careful about how you use Google, but we have a library and learning center, which is, you're not prohibited from using Google, but be very careful about the information that you get out there. There's a lot of junk out there. And so anyway, be aware that you need to learn how to use Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, PDF. You especially know how to use Word because your written assignments will all be Word oriented, people. Do not submit an assignment PDF because you will get a 0 because I can't go through and edit it. I can't run it through Grammarly. You cannot run a PDF document. And there are a few students who have done it thinking, okay, he got a lot of papers, he's great. Nope, the system will notify me. But in the assignments, you'll see the words using Word document. You need to be able to understand how to use digital books, which I appreciate a great deal, and other tools, the Blackboard learning mode, and so that's one of the things that you need to be able to do. You need to be able to use WebEx and be able to navigate WebEx to be able to find to your classroom and those kinds of things. So information literacy, getting credible resources. And I already told you this before, that you're going to need to use credible resources. I also gave you an article that helps you with information literacy. In our day and time, with that being a lot of information out there, some of it is not based on what we call academic studies. There is one website that I'm going to tell you right now, and if you use it, you will get points off right away. It's in, I'm going to mention it to you now. It's called Wikipedia. Do not use Wikipedia. Do not. One other, Course Hero. Course Hero. Do not use that. That is a paper mill. When we run your papers through Grammarly and we see Course Hero, because what Course Hero does is that it has some good stuff and bad stuff, but the bad stuff outweigh the good stuff, so stay away from Course Hero. So, oh, but I've used it before. Stop using it because it is not beneficial. What it is it leads you to sources where other people have done even the same assignment that you're working on, and people have tried to take it and appropriate it to their own. And that is a no-no, because you get into a violation of the code of professional responsibility, not responsibility, but dealing with the academic integrity issue that you could face in the school and could ultimately end up being booted from the program and school. Notice the 3 that I've talked about so far. These involve you as an individual: critical thinking, digital fluency, information literacy. Now we transition into interacting with others. That's the next 3. First one is communication, displaying it in written and oral communication, being able to understand nonverbal language. If I'm doing this, most of the time, I'm not shaking my head just to wrench my neck. Somebody asked me a question, the answer is no. We like the word no. We like to hear you speak, but the point of the matter is no. Yes, it's okay. If I'm smiling, that's probably good. If I'm frowning, that could be bad. It could be directed at your answer. It could be directed at the situation. It could be directed at something I'm going through or feeling. But the point of the matter is we have to be able to be good communicators, especially in CJ. Diversity and teamwork. You're going to learn to deal with people from various backgrounds, various cultures, very religious group, various sexual preferences. I am a pastor of a Christian church. I don't care if you're a Buddhist. I don't care if you're Jehovah's Witness. I don't care if you're whatever. That's your own business. But if a person is operating from their beliefs, then they need to express that clearly and be not concerned about how someone might take them as an individual. I'm an African American, as you can see, and I tell people that there are people of various cultures on this call, on this line, in my classroom. I don't assume that based upon your gender information that you want to be addressed as he or she. I don't assume that. And if I do, please forgive me if I do that in error, because of the fact that a lot of transgender stuff going on around. Your perspective is your perspective, but you still need to respect the choices that people have. You need to demonstrate empathy while working with people from various backgrounds and perspectives. That's the whole point in a nutshell. This school is all about that. We do that from the employment perspective. However, I know that in my work, primarily there are females that I work with in education, but I respect them and they respect me. We each have every year training in Title IX to deal with respecting each other in terms of sexual differences. We also learn to accept people for how their lifestyle is. So to that end, I am part of what's called the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at this college. And I work with that strongly because I'm a strong believer in that. Teamwork, you'll be working in teams. How do you work in teams in this course? Pretty much through discussion posts. Pretty much, because it's a little different when you're open all over the country, when you're at large, so to speak. But your opportunity to work as teamwork, individuals supportive of each other. Don't be phony, be real. But if you have a disagreement with a person's perspective, explain that, but don't shoot them down. There's a way to do that. Ethics. Oh my God, ethics are so important. So much to the point that I'm a ethics guru. I have taught in this school ethics in criminal justice. I have taught ethics in medicine and law. I have taught ethics in business. So almost all of the disciplines I've taught ethics, and I operate on that basis in my life, and I expect you to be able to do the same. It is a habit that actually should start at home. However, it needs to be a habit that you need to do in terms of your work ethic, not necessarily having your boss to look over your shoulder, but you need to be able to earn honestly for the time that you are paid. Must be able to understand too, for example, in your professions, that you must operate ethically. Those who you in law enforcement uh, will have attacks on you because of some unethical practices that law enforcement officers have demonstrated against individuals, and particularly, and just be honest, uh, with being an African American in this world, dealing with law enforcement sometimes gets to be a little precarious. Now, I have been one. You'll hear me talking about that a little later on when you learn about who I am. But I encourage students, and I attend seminars with the Illinois Chiefs of Police, and there are police officers from all over the country, and we discuss these issues in these sessions. I've actually been in sessions where I've had Caucasian officers to say that they are afraid of African American people, especially males, because of the fact that there are stereotypes that take place. But we need to understand that in terms of operating ethically, that everybody bleeds red blood. I don't care what you say. I know that this blood is blue. Nurse told me that, but I said, but when I see it, it's red. And so the point of the matter is that we need to operate that way. Don't need to have a code of silence that can get you in trouble, and it can land you in jail and cause you to lose your jobs. Yeah, there's peer pressures that take place, but guess what? I've seen people who succumb to peer pressures, and guess what? They get thrown under the bus, and you all know what that term means. If you don't know what getting thrown under the bus is, uh, ask somebody that's around you. They'll tell you. And that don't mean physically getting thrown under the bus. So hanging you out to dry, same kind of statement, that kind of thing. So apply ethical standards, and then each area has what we call professional code of conduct or responsibility, and you want to make sure you do that. So each of these are what we call our transferable skills. Employers have indicated to us they want you to be proficient in them. And then there's more information. You can click on this on your time here. I told you we had a lot of material to cover, but I got to do it this way because this is an all comprehensive. This first lecture is so important about understanding the expectations, and it'll make your next 5 weeks much smoother. So bear with me. It's all for your good. So anyway, that's transferable skills. Now, I want to share this video with you, and I'm going to have to take off my headset because otherwise you won't hear this, but it'll always be here. I want you to pay close attention. It's about a 4-minute video. So listen very carefully and pay attention to it. What is academic integrity? Academic integrity is making decisions in your academic life that are based on honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, and respect. This means being honest in the work you do while respecting the work that others do. Okay, so now you see of citations in the body and references at the end. Also, you see that on this page, there's other information as well about some of the things I've already shared with you. Making an appointment. There's just let me say this, guys, that we are here to help you succeed. Okay, and that's what we want to do. We want you to uh, develop uh, good work habits so that when you do leave the school, that you actually find yourself in a situation where you can advance in life. Yours truly has been able to advance quite easily because of the ethics that I maintain throughout my life. I didn't say I was perfect, but I can tell you that there have been things that have happened, and I've been had to get called out on the carpet because I was in charge, and some of the things I didn't correct as quickly as I needed to. And that goes back to something over 25 years ago, that not something I did, something that somebody who I was responsible for did. And so anyway, those kinds of things can affect you in a negative fashion. All right, so now let's go back to the syllabus. Okay, so I've talked about the transferable skills. The attendance policy I won't talk about, but I do want to talk about this, and this will be one of the last topics that I spend time on pretty much on the syllabus. Um, Assignments are due, I already told you, generally based upon the schedule that you have on your calendar, as you will see in your announcements, um, that they're due on Sundays for written assignments, except when we get to the last day of class. Your initial posts, we already talked about that, and reply posts. But notice this, when you miss an assignment that is, let me give you an example. Each day that your assignment is late, you lose 10%. Now I'm not talking about your discussion posts. I'm talking about your written assignments. So let's say if your assignment is good and you produce it on Sunday and everything is all equal with it, then you end up getting 100%. But if you submit that same assignment on Monday, you're going to get a 90 as the highest. Tuesday, 80, and so forth and so on. By the time you reach Wednesday, you're at C level or either lower by the time you get to Thursday, to D. So that's the point. So it is very, very, very important. I've already said about discussion posts. Now, so let me explain discussion posts once again. Initial posts are due Tuesday, reply posts are due Saturday. If you submit initial post on that Sunday with your regular assignments that are due, you are going to get a 0 for the discussion post because the forum is over. We are not discussing that topic anymore. And you cannot do an alternate assignment as it says here, because I don't do that. But your discussion posts are due on the dates that they say. You will lose a point for each day. Now, let me tell you something that I do that's different from probably other professors. If your initial post is submitted Saturday, that means it's already late because it was due Tuesday. You will get points minus 1 point for each day. If you submit your reply post on Sunday, listen to me good, when the assignment discussion form is over, I will still give you credit for it, but I will deduct a point. So that's something that I don't have to do, but I've been doing this to help my students. And I'm probably one of the only professors that do it. A lot of them just cut it off dead straight 11:59 Sunday, Saturday rather. So that's how you do it. So I've had students to give me some really good discussion posts, but they were all given to me on the Sunday. And I said, too late. I can't give you any points. This is a good, well thought out discussion, but I can't give you any points because the discussion forum is over. Okay. Now, talking about that, the late assignment, 10%. If you pay attention to the late assignment submission policy, let me bring that up here. It says instructors, notice who that is. That would be me in this class. May waive, it did say will, but may waive the late penalty in the case of extenuating circumstances as determined by the faculty. Now, we as faculty members should be very empathetic when it comes to dealing with that. And I have to determine on a case-by-case basis what extenuating circumstances is. But there are a lot of situations that we have to take into consideration, such as the current situation that we are in. Now, I can't help you if you're locked in and you can't get to a computer. I don't know what to tell you. I just don't know what to tell you. That's something that you would have to should have addressed with the school itself because of the pandemic now. So you can't get to the libraries and places like that. But I will tell you this, that extenuating circumstances are interpreted very liberally by me. I don't want you to give me a note from your doctor. I don't want to see your medical information. I don't want to see your obituaries. I don't want to see your orders if you're in the military, which, by the way, I never penalize people who are in those situations. And now, under the situation that we are currently in, if you're a first responder, then I'm not going to penalize you either. I need to just know. I need to be aware. I know the circumstances that people are working. And I have even now reached the stage where I understand people working in stores and things of that nature. But listen to me good. I'm not giving you ideas for how to get your time extended because it's going to come back and it's going to bite you. Time management is very, very, very important. Sometimes, and it won't happen this quarter, is that people will come back and say, I had a pre-planned trip and vacation. And I said, okay, you're still going to get dinged. But we don't have that issue anymore because of the situation that we are currently in dealing with COVID-19. So the point of the matter is that just be aware is that I'm here for you, and here's the deal. I've had some very serious situations, such as I had a student who was in class in the lecture, and she had to leave. And then afterwards, she sent me a message telling me her dad just died. Well, I didn't text that person back. I got on the phone and I called that person back to talk to them and discuss with them. And that's the kind of person that I am. That's just how I am when it comes to students. There's a lot of professors who are not like that. For example, most professors don't give their cell phone numbers out. They use a Google number. Now, this is my cell phone number. That's 630-660-8480. It's all over Facebook, which, by the way, if you want to become my friend on Facebook, feel free to reach out to me, Richard Wright, JD. JD stands for Juris Doctor of my law degree. And I accept many of my students and have students down through the years who have become friends of mine on Facebook. That's a little digression. So anyway, I'm here. All right. And if you need it, I'm here. All right. Now, when it comes to incomplete grading policy, you need to read this yourself so that in case you need it. But I, again, am the person who determined whether or not that's even going to take place. But I do not have, I had a student ask me for an incomplete in week 5. And they had done 5% of the work up to that point. and they said they had some problems that stopped them from completing their work. I didn't know and wasn't aware of, because when I run into a situation, sometimes I'll tell you to talk to your advisor, talk to your academic dean, as to what you might do. Sometimes people need to take medical leaves. Sometimes people have other issues that cause them to have to withdraw from a course, and those kinds of things. The key thing is, don't wait until the last week or so, or let me know. Then this is your academic integrity policy. Take time to read it. Pay attention to the requirements here. Sit down and read it. And you've already kind of gotten some general ideas based upon misconduct, cheating, and those kind of plagiarism and those kind of things. All right. Now, and that's your syllabus. Okay, now let's go back to the classroom and let's take a look at your week 1 announcement. So this week, as each week, you will see the announcement there, and it tells you what your assignment is. It tells you what the topic is: corrections in American history and theory. I'm not going to lecture on that today. Normally I would, but with the next weeks I will. You read chapters 1 through 3 of the text, excuse me, and complete the activities: transferable skill, introduction, for correction, opponent jails, probation, parole, the evolution of corrections, and vocabulary review. These are things that will help you understand the module, and I'll show you what those are in a minute. This tells you when the lectures take place, which you already know. This talks about the discussion period, which starts next week. Complete the quiz and the written assignment, components of corrections. I will show you that assignment in just a few minutes, and then remind you about the lecture. And then here's something that you're going to learn about me in just a few minutes. Adversity is the springboard to success. You're going to learn why I say that, and what I feel about that as far as each and every one of my students. Okay, so now that's how, every week you're going to see one of these. Pay attention to what it says in the announcements. The course calendar is another place that you're going to find your schedule. Here we go now. And here is the course calendar. I got to take out the one for constitutional law. Okay, that comes out. Okay, that's another class that I teach. And so here's where we are. So you see, we started on Monday the 6th. And so this is the live lecture. And you'll notice that there is no discussion here. Normally there would be. So your assignments for the week are going to be based on the components of corrections and your quiz. And we're going to, you'll see that as well. All right, and then your last checkbox in there is the one for your live lecture that we're doing right now, which I'll give you a keyword for. Now, notice how it works. You have the whole course in here. You say, well, professor, it's only a little line. Click on it, and it opens up, and it gives you more information. The live lecture, it gives you more information, and it gives you the whole schedule. And notice your next lecture is the 15th, then the 22nd, then the 29th, and then the 6th of May. Now, let me show you where we end up at. By the time we get to the 6th of May, you'll have one more week. The class ends on a Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. The 12th of May is the day that it ends. That is your last day in this class. You cannot go to the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. All right. In fact, I have to have your grades in by either, I think it's either that Thursday or that Friday, one or the other for this particular course. So the point of the matter is that all grades are due. Now, that's your course calendar. Oh, one thing I want to tell you about your grades. The school has a policy that your grades are due the Friday after you submit them. So I have a responsibility that I try to adhere to. Sometimes I fall a little bit off, but I try to maintain it as much as possible because I have so many students that I have to try to get your grades in. For example, let's go back to week 1. Okay, so your assignments are due this Sunday. The one item that I'll have to grade will be um, this. And this grade for this assignment will be due by the 18th or by the end of the day on the 17th. That's when I have time to get those done. So if you submit yours early, as already I see some students have already completed the assignment, I may not grade it until next week, but I may grade it over the weekend. But then I'm ahead then with you in terms of that as well. So be aware that that's how it works. All right. Now I will attempt, and forgive me if I fall off because there are various things that happen, especially with this pandemic situation that we are under now, students as well as faculty, we understand. And so with the responsibilities that we have, I work from home. I have 4 kids here that range from 24 to 11. And there are different things that happen that sometimes I'll have to take time to deal with. And, so be aware that everybody, we're all in this together. That's the key thing that you need to be aware of. All right. So now I think I've covered everything I want to cover, except showing you what the module is. Yes. Okay, let's go to module 1. So the assignments, which I've been talking about already, written assignment, components of corrections. Now, and you're given, you will be asked to be part of a team. And so you're going to update your county's website with an overview of the 4 components of correction. There are 4 components only: jails, prison, probation, parole. Law enforcement is not a component of corrections. Okay? Attorneys are not. Just the jails, prisons, probation, or parole. So you're going to develop a concept map or infographic that, okay, and then this tells you some frequently asked questions about how to do it and so forth. Now, when you do this, you're going to submit it as a Microsoft Word document. All right. Now, very, very, very important. Tells you too, if you have a problem, you need help, reach out to a tutor. A tutor can always help you and to get this done. All right. So now let's go back and let's look at the rubric. You see the due date is the 12th. That's this Sunday. Now let's take a look at the rubric. So you can always view the rubric. And here is what it looks like. Now, here's what it says. It says you get 20 points if you are at mastery, satisfy all of these sections here. Okay? Look at what it says. Proficiency, in other words, you lose 3 points out of this section if you do it this and here, and then you'll only get 11 points out of it. Now, be aware of the fact that you're going to discover that in these components, one of the things that will really get you messed up quickly is not citing your sources, not satisfying APA. I am not as dogmatic with APA in this first assignment, but I do want you to develop it as a habit, okay? Because developing within here, you're going to see that when you get to down here, it'll tell you for the next part, elements or components, 15 points. And it talks about providing a description of 2 unique elements. Over here, if you don't complete that, you're going to lose points for that. And then the presentation of the material, you want to get 5 points. So the key thing is you want to come down each section here. And I'm going to tell you what you did wrong under each. There's a section when you get into the grade book, and you will see details or remarks under. So you got to go in and look at that in order to see it. All right. So there'll be several students who will reach out to me and says, I don't see how I got this grade. It's because you didn't, you operate on the basis of these. You don't want to get emerging. You don't want to get competence because that can get you C, but you want to get B or A. This is A over here. All right. Any questions? If so, type in the chat box. This is the rubric that we'll be using, and each week you'll have to pay attention to what's in here. Some of you are pretty familiar with them already. All right. So I'm not a fan of this type of rubric, but this is the one that they built into this course, and they've asked me to, oh, give it a shot. I did last quarter, not last quarter, yeah, in the winter quarter was the first quarter that it was a 5.5, and I said, okay, I'll continue with it. So make sure that you read this very carefully. All right. Now, the other assignment that you have for the week is your quiz. It is time for 30 minutes. Now, this course is different from any other course that you're going to take. It gives you more than one opportunity. This is a time quiz and it's set for 30 minutes. You'll have 3 opportunities to complete this quiz before the due date. The highest attempt will remain in the grade book. If you only take it once, then it's going to be in there. So, you know, the key thing is you get 3 bites out of the apple. All right. So this is a unique situation. Now, by starting this quiz, you agree to abide by the academic integrity policy in the course syllabus, which we've already kind of talked about. And then your live classroom lecture, you're going to give the key phrase. This is all due. Notice if you clicked on it, it tells you when it's due. There it is, 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. With the quiz, same thing, 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. Okay, so don't tell me, it says, oh, I started the quiz, professor, and I didn't do too well. I wish I could have done better. You got 3 times to take it before. And by the way, your 3 times runs out. You could take it on Tuesday. You could take it on Thursday. You could take it on Saturday or the Sunday. But the point of the matter is you get 3 chances. I have never seen them do that in all the years I've been teaching here, but they did it this time, and I kind of understand what they did and why they did it. So being fair with you guys that are just starting into the program, and it takes some pressure off of you. All right. So that's the assignments. So each week we'll talk about the assignments. All right. You'll hear me talk about more APA starting with next week's stuff. So now the lesson content, I'm not going to go into this in detail. It gives the objectives to deal with the 4 components of corrections. I already told you what they are: jail, prison, probation, or parole, period. And you're going to learn how the theories have influenced the development of corrections and the political and social issues that have impacted. So you do your reading, then you got your transferable skills, introduction. We already kind of talked about transferable skills a lot for correctional components. Then you got jails, prison, probation, parole. These are the 4. The evolution of corrections, the vocabulary review, and then your assignments. So I'm not going to go over that. We did this already. So you can see that again. Here is a video too that talks about transferable skills. You can take time to look at that as well. The 4 components of corrections, I already told you what they were. And then the 2 that involve incarceration are jails and prison. And then it talks about jails and how they actually started out. Prisons, little history of information. You want to take the time to go over this because it's going to be included in your exam. Probation and parole pretty much have to do with outside. Probation occurs when you never went to prison, and then parole takes place after prison when your rest of your sentence is served on the outside. You're going to understand determinate and indeterminate sentencing and what that means as well. And then jails and prisons, you're going to drag the term that fits in the correspondence. So if you commit if you're sentenced to 1 year or less, does anybody know what we call those? When you're sentenced to 1 year or less? Anybody know? You can type in the chat box. Yeah, no. Okay, it's jail, but what, what do you, I know it goes to jail. Does anybody know? Okay, so yeah, you're right. It does go to jail. Oops. Okay, but does anybody know what we call sentences that are one? Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Marissa. It's a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor. Sentences are at least a year and a day. We call those what? There we go. Hey, now you guys got it. And that goes in on the prison side. Okay. Operated at federal and state level can also be privately run. Is that jails or prisons? Somebody's doing some work here. Houses people pre-trial and involves booking process. There we go. See if you're in the swing. Includes option for bail or conditional release. Typically jurisdiction of the sheriff, and who does that? Who does the whose jurisdiction is typically, who belongs to that? Is that prisons or is it jails? There you go. Try putting it under prisons and it'll bounce right back out at you. Yeah, because you're right. Somebody might say, yeah, good job, yay, so you get a star. Great. So these are things that can help you, and you do the same thing. Let's do this one real quick here. Due process rights applied to the revocation process. Which one? Yeah, but you know what? It's funny. It is. It is intended for parole, but due process rights also apply for this as well, but it's a different term. You'll see in a minute. Parole board has jurisdiction in revocation. And if you get this one wrong, that means you're not even reading the question. Is that parole or probation? Which one? Yeah, because it starts out with, it doesn't say probation board, it says parole board. So if you put it over here, that means you didn't even read the question. All right. Utilized for all levels of offenses, misdemeanors to felony. Which one? Yep. Come on, stick over there. There we go. The state of Bureau of Prisons maintains jurisdiction over persons. That tells you in there. So which one? Yeah. If you see the word prisons, think of parole. Alternative to incarceration. There we go. And the three components of probation are investigation, intake, and supervision. If you put this under parole, you failed the course. Okay, because it tells you the answer. Okay. Okay. So anyway, you see what I mean. And so I'm not going to go through each of these. You can do the same thing. Vocabulary review. Very, 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 very. Did I say very enough times that you got the point that you want to make sure that you do go through this? Here's how you do it. I just clicked on it, and then it starts the quiz. This is a practice quiz. So this is a non-graded thing, but I'm just going to show you. Very important. Match the items with their descriptions and so forth. And then you submit and it tells you. So I'm just showing you how. I'm not going through it because we don't have the time. But very, 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 very important because of the fact that it's going to have something to do with your quizzes. I just told you, and it's there. Take my word for it, believe me. And the same thing deal with the evolution of corrections. And so that's that. Okay. Um, any questions about how the weekly modules are going to operate? Because I'm over my time, but I've got to talk to you about something that's really important. And it's going to take us longer, I know, but it is very important for you to stick with this and understand it. Okay, let's get going here. I'm going to go back, and I want to go back to the course homepage. I will not be going over what I'm getting ready to talk about more than once. In my announcement, it says adversity is the springboard to success. Here it is. I'm going to explain it to you. I'm not just throwing something to motivate you. This is all about yours truly. It all started Memorial Day of 1957. My mother and father had a man who was a roomer in our house. He rented a room. And when he rented this room, he had his own room. And Memorial Day of 1957, when I was 7 years old, I had 5 younger sisters, and we all shared one bedroom. We had bunk beds facing different directions, and we were living in Chicago on the west side. This man and my father got into it. They had a fight. My dad had taken me to a baseball game. He loved the White Sox, so he took me to a baseball game. We came home, and that evening we were in the bed, and the fight took place. Well, the fight ended up in the bedroom where all 6 of us kids were laying down. And someone turned the lights on in the room, and the man, his name was Scott, took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the forehead. I'll never forget that day, guys, because I have a photographic memory. And I can tell you that it was pretty tough. But I'm telling you this because I want to guide you to understanding why adversity is a springboard to success. The guy didn't go to jail for killing my dad, My mom, as it turned out, stood up for him because she was in love with this guy and said my dad was the aggressor, which was not true. And so the guy didn't go to jail. He began sleeping openly with my mother. My father was buried. And for the next 5 years, this man subjected us to all kinds of violence in the house. I basically was in a home of domestic violence. The police would come all the time. There were times when he would beat her so bad that her face was disfigured. He would go to jail. She'd go back, get him, bring him right back home. And this continued from 57 to 62. In the meantime, she fathered, he fathered two kids with my mother, never married her. The area that we were living in became pretty bad. The gangs were involved. But the two major gangs, the Viceroys and Cobras, decided that they would make a pact that they would not recruit me because they knew what I had gone through. And back in those days, the gangs were different. And what changed the gangs, I'll talk about in another class, but it had to do with crack cocaine. But at any rate, the fact of the matter is that they made me aware of something getting ready to go down and would always keep me out of the mix of it. But my mother decided that she would leave the area anyway. And we had our own house, two flat, and she rented out the first floor where we were living. There were already people living on the second floor. And we moved to Gary, Indiana in summer of 62. When we moved to Gary, it was a very nice community called Terrytown. It had single family housing. It had Little League. It had all the things that a suburban community could ever want. And we began living there. It was my mom, my then 7 younger sisters, and um, this man with my mother. But then an aunt came from Michigan to stay with us. And when she came, she was pretty tough. She was like the Tyler Perry character, Medea. She carried a gun, and she didn't take any stuff. And so there was no beatings or none of those kind of things that took place. And she stayed there until early in 63, probably around March or April of 63. And she left to go back to be with her husband in Michigan. Well, my mother had a restaurant in downtown Gary. So we come ahead to Memorial Day of 1963. And my mother leaves and tells me to make sure everything is okay in the house, and that I was always in charge because I was the oldest. I was 13 at that time because my birthday was May 3rd. And so at any rate, I found myself, taking care of the house, which was pretty easy. My mom left to go to her restaurant. And so I took care of the house. Everybody went to bed. And then early the next morning, before day, smoke was in the house. So I woke up and I went into the kitchen. Someone had turned the stove on and there was barbecue in the oven. Well, I opened the door to let the smoke out. And when I opened the door, I saw at the side of our house, there was a carport where the car was parked in the driveway. And I saw the car pull away. And it was a car that my mother and Scott shared. And so anyway, I got all the smoke out, went back to bed, and later on that day, we were all up. Two gentlemen showed up, identified themselves as Gary police officers, and they made the announcement that my mother had been found dead in Chicago. I lost it. I started yelling, Scott, Scott, Scott. I started yelling this man's name. And the man, as it turned out, had stabbed her multiple times around the corner from the house. You remember when I say I saw the car drive away? She had already been stabbed multiple times and drove her body to Chicago, parked it, turned himself in to the police. And one of my aunts, my mother's sisters came, not the one from Michigan. She came and she said, we're going to take you back to our house in the South Side Chicago in the Chatham area. And we stayed at her house. When we got there, as soon as we got there, she sat us all down. Now remember, at this time I'm 13, I'm the oldest, and we were stair step pretty much after that, the seven girls. And so anyway, we were told that we were going to be split up and sent different places. Well, you can imagine how that was. After having just lost a dad, in 57, and then my mom. So now we're lost. It's just bad. So we stayed at my aunt's house, and it was hell on wheels. She made us clean up the house as servants. I remember they would have pizza upstairs, and they would send us the crust downstairs where we stayed in the basement. It wasn't a bad basement. It was like an apartment down there, but it was the way we were treated. And it was bad. It was very bad. This was my blood now. This was my mother's sister. And so anyway, another aunt, the one that from Michigan, came back when she got wind of what was going to happen. And she said, those kids are not going to be split up. I'm taking these kids and my husband, and we're going to have a house built for them. And she did. And we moved out of there in 64 rather, to a house that she had built. Let me go back to after my mother was killed. It was so bad, and you'll see me close my eyes sometime because I can see stuff when I do that. But that my mother's wake was, that was the last time I saw her. I couldn't go to the funeral. I couldn't take it, and I never did. And I didn't go to the gravesite for many years because I couldn't handle it. Both her and my dad were both buried in a cemetery called Burr Oak, which was in the news some years ago here in Illinois for desecrating of graves. But at any rate, went through all of that. And so we moved into this house in 64, in the summer of 64. And it was brought to my attention that my aunt and uncle wanted to adopt all of us. I did not want to be adopted because of the fact that I wanted to carry on my dad's name because I was the only boy and the oldest. Well, I ended up having trouble with my uncle, especially. He said that I was disrespecting him, but we never really hit it off, and I really didn't like him. I would find out many years later, by the way, that he, during that period, was sexually assaulting my sisters. I found that out years and years and years and years later. So anyway, he and I didn't get along living in that house. And so my aunt, her hands were tied. They would get into arguments and fights. And I told you she carried a gun. He had guns. And there were times when guns were pulled. And we were right in the middle of it as kids. And it was really bad. It was really bad. And so in 64, I would also find out that Scott had pled guilty and was being sentenced to 10 years in jail. But in that day and time, 10 meant 5 because of the, excuse me, the indeterminate sentencing. But he would serve 5 years, 5 years in jail. But I later would find even worse, that they would cut a year and a half off for good behavior. And ultimately, that's what he ended up serving. So I was very troubled. I started asking people what can be done about this, and they told me, they says there's nothing that can be done. That's just the way it is, and I don't accept that as an answer. So finally, someone said to me, "That's the legal system," and then they explained to me these people called lawyers. So I went to the school. I was in 8th grade, and I asked the librarian, "Did we have any books on attorneys or lawyers?" They had one little small book, and I asked if I could check it out, and I took it home, And I stayed up that whole night and read that book from cover to cover. And then, guys, anybody I met the next day, I said, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to become a lawyer. Immediately when I did that, all hell broke loose. My aunt, the one, remember, that said she was going to split us up, didn't want us at her house, really, she sent the word that I was aiming too high. She says I didn't have what it takes. And I'm going to tell you, good people, this. Even today, never let anybody tell you what you cannot become. And never take the time to say, I'm going to show you. I didn't do that. I just proceeded quietly to do what I needed to do. And you're going to hear the rest. And then, by the way, you'll hear her come up in the story a little later again. And so, anyway, so I found that out. And that was, and so that was my goal, to become that. So anyway, I found myself also in a situation where I didn't have a mother or a father. Really, I was living with my aunt and uncle. And I heard this lady on the radio and I liked her voice. So I went and found her and asked her to be my mother. I didn't know her. I just heard her on the radio. I was 14. Now, back in those days, 14-year-olds were little. Now 14-year-olds are 6'2" and beards and mustaches and all kinds of stuff. I didn't have any of that stuff. So anyway, I found myself with this lady and we became friends. Of course, she rejected what I said, but we became good friends. And she started spending time with me periodically. I would go to her house. My aunt would let me go to her house and I'd stay with her over weekends and stuff like that. But the point of the matter is that I still did not have a mother. And so I went through a series of situations through high school. And while I was in high school, it, it the, I got active with the church in the community. I got active in the community with other organizations. I had a paper route. I had a job at McDonald's, and I did all kinds of things to stay out of the house. I would visit my friends and so forth. Well, came to my junior year in high school. I went to a high school called Fanger High School, and when I was going to the school, the church came to my aunt and uncle and told them that the church was going to award me a 4-year scholarship to go to college, Philander Smith University down in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that I wouldn't have to pay anything. All they had to do was sign. My uncle said, no, I'm not doing it. And so right there in front of me, the pastor and one members of the board from the church, he said, I'm not doing it. And they said, well, they said to me, my hands are tied, nothing we can do. So I made a statement saying, okay, I'm going to finish up my education. And when I graduate from high school, I'm leaving. I'm going out. Well, my friends, some of the members of the church, uh, they got wind of what was going on, and they agreed to let me come stay with them when I graduated from high school. And so when I graduated in 1969, I ended up going to stay with my friends and their mother and father. And they told me, they said that I didn't have to pay them because I was going to go to school, and I registered for a junior college at what was called Loop City College, which is called Harold Washington City College now. And so I started out there, got a job that the people I was staying with had someone downtown they knew who worked in a big law firm. And they got me a job in the mail room. And here I was on my way. Somebody said, in the mail room? I said, pay attention to what I'm about to say. When I started working there, first of all, the guys would wear polo shirts like about what I'm wearing now here. You can see, the collar. But I wore a regular dress shirt. Back in those days, white shirts were in, and I wore a tie. And I did that every day. I didn't wear a jacket. And so I would take packages to different individuals. One day, I took a package to McDonald's Corporation, which was one of their clients, and a gentleman by the name of Ray Kroc. You don't know that name, or maybe you might know that name, but he's the chairman and founder of McDonald's. He's passed away now. But Mr. Kroc uh, took a liking to me and made me his personal messenger. And I would go take packages to him, and he would take me to meetings, and we'd go to lunch. And he, we'd never go to McDonald's to eat, but he explained to me how McDonald's worked and all of that. He said, "Young man, you're going to go places." Well, as it turned out, one of the things I did after that was I decided I wanted to get married right away because I wanted a family so bad. So the young lady I had been dating, she and I got married in 1970, and she graduated in 1970 from high school. And so we got married, and I continued to stay with the family for just a couple of weeks after I got married. And then my wife then and I, we got an apartment together. We just had a mattress. We had a box for a table. We had a little tiny little TV. And so we were both in school. She was going to be a teacher, and I was studying pre-law. Well, comes along 71, a child, it's a girl. 72, it's a girl. And in the meantime, the law firm, I had no car. I was on public transportation. I ended up, by the way, when I was 71, when I was 21 and 71, when the first child was born, one day on my way to work to the law firm, and I was standing in front of the bus stop, and this guy walks past me, and I look at him, and I realized it was Scott, the man who had killed my parents. He was out. Well, I went up to him and asked him, can I help him? He started talking to me. He didn't realize it was me. But for a minute, I said, I'm going to take this guy in the alley and I'm going to take care of him. But I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And so I answered his questions. He said he was looking for his family. And I said, describe your family. And so he started describing the family, and it fit us to a T. And then I said, well, I know a family like that that used to live on the west side in a red brick house on Millard. He said, that was my house. That's where I lived, and those are my kids. I realized it was him. So I let him go, and I called my boss and told him I couldn't come to work because I wasn't feeling right, and I told him what happened. They told me to take the rest of the day off. So the law firm then decided that they would help to get this man out of our life, and they drug him into court with an order of protection. It's now called order of protection. It was a peace bond then. And I saw him in court, and he was never to be around us again, and he never was anymore after that. Well, at any rate, it was a pretty tough time for me while still going to school, raising these two kids. So the law firm made me a file clerk, and I worked in the file department. And then what happened is that I ended up staying on the dean's list and honor roll at the junior college. I studied on the L, on the train, on the buses. I would have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning, and I would get out of work at 4 and have to be in classes at 4:30 Monday through Thursday, and then Saturday classes. And I studied hard. Like I said, back in those days, we didn't have digital. It was books. So anyway, I ended up leaving the junior college and got accepted in the political science, majoring in political science and minoring in accounting at Roosevelt University, the four-year institution. And so the law firm uh, ran into a situation where something happened with the law librarian, and they offered me the job, so I became the law librarian. And while I was doing that job as law librarian, I used to sit and listen to the lawyers in the library talk about the work that they were doing in their cases. By the way, from day one, when I got to the law firm as a messenger, I introduced myself to them as Richard Wright, and that one day I was going to be a lawyer. And they would smile and extended hands shakes, but my talk and my walk matched, and they began to see the law firm was aware of how I was doing in school, because they would have a bulletin and they would circulate it around to the various lawyers. Anyway, the point of the matter is that I was on my way. So as a law librarian, I got a call from Rick Kroc, who congratulated me each level. When I went to the file department, he congratulated me. Anyway, the point of the matter is I was moving upward. So I listened very carefully to the lawyers. I used to look at the books, and I used to take the books and I would read the books and look at the materials. I taught myself how to do legal research. One day, the lawyers were talking about some points of law, and I listened enough that I understood what they were saying. And when they went to lunch, I went and I pulled every one of the cases that I could find based on the procedures that I had learned as to how to research manually. And so came back from lunch and they were saying to me, we can't find any of the cases we need. And I says, come with me. And I showed them in the corner, there were books stacked up. And they said, who did this? And they found out it was me. And they took me to the big boss, and the big boss says, um, um, what's going on? He says, Richard Wright, we're wasting money on him. And they said, what's wrong? He's good. No. He knows how to research. He showed me some things that he had written that were mocked, where they were memos, and these are things we learned while we were in law school. And they said, well, what do we think we should do? And so they said, we need to give him some kind of job or something. They came up with this title, law clerk. You know what they call that title today? Does anybody know what they call those people today? You know what they call them today? Anybody? Starts with a P. What do they call those people today? Nobody knows? Type in the chat box if you know. Paralegals. Anyway, so that's what I was, and I stayed doing that. And I continued doing that. I continued on the honor roll at the school. I continued doing well, studying hard, riding public transportation. And I would be so tired, but I still knew I had to do this. So it came to my junior year and it was time to take the law school admission test, and I took it. I didn't do too well with it, but I still was decided I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm going to still become a lawyer. And then I made a decision as to what law school I was going to go to. The advice given to me was to pick 3 law schools. And I said, I'm not picking 3 law schools. I'm picking 1 law school. And that's Northwestern University School of Law. I said, I'm going to go there. Well, people said, do you know how hard it is to get into that school? I said, yeah, I've done research. I had gotten their catalogs, and they talked about how they have thousands of students applying for positions and the 250 seats that they give every year. And so it came time for me to do the application, and I completed it. But guys, when I finished my application, rather than being 6 pages and sending it over, I put it in a big box with some written information, some samples of my writing. I wrote a little story about what I had gone through to reach the level that I had reached in life. And I sent it over. Well, I got a call from the law school inviting me to come because they wanted to see who was behind this package. They had never had anything like this before. So I was invited over and I sat in a room and I was talked with by 4 individuals. And they asked me all kind of questions. And then they deliberated and came back and said to me, well, we don't make decisions about admitting students this way. We just wanted to learn about you. We like everything we heard. But what we are going to tell you is this, is that you're going to receive some correspondence from us that we think that'll make you happy. Well, that was their informal way of telling me I was accepted into the class. So I started the class of 75. I graduated from Roosevelt University with a major in political science with honors. Uh, I was 2 courses away from a double major in accounting, but I didn't stay because it was time to go since I got accepted at Northwestern. So I ended up going on to the law school. My wife at that time, she graduated and was a teacher. So we both graduated in 75. I'm from Roosevelt, she from Chicago State University. So we started classes in August of 75. And when I was starting, it was going along good. It was a challenge. It was some hard work, but I was up to it, especially the legal research. That was really easy for me to do. And so, at any rate, something happened though to change all of that. My wife at that time, who's now my ex-wife, she worked for the Chicago Board of Education. They went on strike. They had not gone on strike before. And one of the first things they told me when I got to Northwestern is that I could not work while going to school. They said it was required that I give all of my attention to it, and they wouldn't admit me unless I agreed to that. So I did. So here we are now with no income. The lights went out. Couldn't pay the light bills. So guess how I studied? Candlelight. We ate cans of beans. It was really tough. So we took the 2 girls and sent them to their grandmother, which she lived not too far from us. And so we weathered the storm. So finally, it just got too much for me. And I told one of my professors, her name was Joyce Hughes. She's currently there now. She's still there. She had just come there in 75 from Minnesota, graduate of University of Minnesota Law School. And she was one of my professors. And Professor Hughes, I told her I was going to have to leave the school because I needed to earn some money to support my family. She said, before I left, come to my office. She took me to her office, met me at her office, sat me down, stood in front of the door, locked it, folded her hands and says, you're not getting out of here until you agree that you're going to stay and stick this out. I will help you. Not financially, I can't, but I will help you. And she did. And I took her up on it. Of course, though, 3 years later, she was one of the first persons I hugged in 78 as I received my law degree. But let me go back to being back in the law school. So while I was in law school, one of my classmates, his dad was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer who would later become a judge. His name was R. Eugene Pincham. Judge Pincham, who at that time was Attorney Pincham, found out about what happened with me. And I'd go to his house with my classmate, his son, along with a couple of other young law students, and we'd sit around and we would talk law. Well, Judge Pincham said, you need closure, young man. So he took me over to the criminal courts building and got the records pulled and made copies for me. And I have them to this day about what happened with my parents. So I learned everything about what happened. At any rate, he said to me, I know you want to be a prosecutor. I said, no, I haven't decided what I want to do. I just know I want to do criminal law. He says, be a defense lawyer. Now listen to what he's saying to me. A person who killed both of my parents, who didn't get a right sentence, is telling me now that I should defend murderers. Guess what? I said I respected this man, and so I made up my mind that that was what I was going to do. So it came to my graduation day, and that was in June of 1978. And I was making out my graduation invitation list. The very first person on the list was, you probably don't remember, the woman who told me that she was going to split us up. The woman who told me that I was aiming too high. I get a little emotional at this part. I invited her to the graduation as my first guest. And I invited others after that. She came, and people began to associate her with me that had known her, didn't know that she was my aunt, including the judge, Pincham.
and she was bragging about me now. But I never said anything to her, guys. I told you. No, I let it speak for itself. Well, she began to recognize me as her nephew during that period because she was into status. So I had some status now, I guess, because I'm about to become a lawyer. So anyway, in the meantime, I ended up uh, going back to, oh, by the way, the law firm let me come on. I became a lawyer. I was the first African American attorney that they hired in their firm. But I didn't want to do corporate law. So I stayed there 2 years to 1980, and then I left. And I started to work with some other lawyers, but I didn't like their ethics. So I started my own practice, Richard H. Wright and Associates. And my practice began with $5,000 the first year. That's what I made. But it was hard. By the way, my wife was still, she was back teaching then. So at any rate, the point of the matter is this, is that uh, here comes a third child, and it's a girl. She was born in the same year I graduated, 1978. So anyway, it was bad. It was still tough. But I had made it, guys. I had done it. I started doing radio, doing giving legal advice. So anyway, I found myself with my wife and I. We started going in different directions, and we split up. And I ended up getting divorced. 87, 87. I ended up meeting a young lady. We became friends. We started dating. I started going to her church. I ended up becoming. I was a Christian, but I became stronger then. And I picked up the phrase "God is able" as for my life. Well, I ended up um, marrying her, and she and I had a little girl. So here I had four daughters. Her mother would become the village president or mayor of a town called Ford Heights in the south suburbs of Chicago. Little did I know that the next thing I'm going to tell you would pan into my career now. I told her I would accept the position as her village attorney slash village prosecutor on one condition: if I could carry a gun. She said, you can't unless you go to the police academy and become a police officer. I said, okay, how about if I do it part-time? She says, sure, the village will pay for you to go. And I did. I took the classes little at a time while I continued practicing law and so forth. And I became a part-time police officer. Then I found out the chief of police, who was my ex mother-in-law's living boyfriend, was crooked, and they took him down. And then a new chief came, and then he made me his investigator, and I was in charge of internal affairs. And so I did all of that. So now I did that from 89 to 93. Well, I found myself in the situation where um, I became a minister in 89. I think it was 89. Yeah, 89. I became a minister, and I went to seminary 91 to 93, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, to study a Master Arts in Religion. Well, I would find out in 93 that my ex-wife, this is now my second wife, and former pastor were doing their thing. So we split up. And then I ended up getting divorced from her. I met a young lady, and we became friends. And we started dating. And she and I got married July 28th, 1994. We've been married now going on 26 years this July. Well, it was a challenge for me. So then I came when I married her. I announced that I probably was not going to be practicing law much longer because I wanted to do things in ministry. I had found out what I wanted to find out. I had done what I had wanted to do. I was very good as a defense attorney. My jury not guilty verdicts were in the 90 percentile. So I was highly taught it. I was trained by Eugene Pincham, other trial lawyers. I even had a stint where I was trained for a while by Johnny Cochran, the former attorney to O.J. Simpson. where I met him originally in '84 in California, and then he came to Chicago after the O.J. Simpson case, and we got a chance to know each other even more. But anyway, so I had some good training. So I ended up deciding okay, so 94, we got married. 95, here comes my first child, and that's my with her, and that is my oldest son. And so then I found myself after that ending up with another boy, then two daughters. And so now you see them all on the picture. So I decided in actually 2000, before the last two, that I was going to leave law. And I started teaching special ed, dealing with special needs kids, helped and mentored many of them. One actually became a juvenile probation officer, and we're friends right now. Well, so I continued doing that, and then I started doing closings for title companies. And so then I ran a janitorial company. So I did all these different things, but I would not go back to practicing law. Finally, in 2011, someone told me about this job at this school I never heard of called Rasmussen. And I did research. I ended up deciding to take a job as an adjunct teaching business law. But I let the dean know right away that I was a criminal justice professional. So for the next few years, from 2011 to 2015, I was in 212 to 215, I was in criminal justice and teaching adjunct. And then they announced to me that the program was going online. So I had to learn how to do all of that stuff. So here's another thing I had to overcome. So at any rate, and I'm trying to speed it up because I know I'm really going over, but this will help you through the years in your life and will help you to succeed in life and understand that your professor that you have here, why I am how I am. So anyway, I found myself um, at a point where I needed a regular job, full-time job. And so it came an opening for state program coordinator at the School of Justice Studies, and I applied, and of course I got it. And that is how I was able to. I was talking earlier about coming to the Rockford campus. I used to have to handle the Rockford campus, the Romeoville campus, the Mokina Tinley Park campus, and the Aurora campus criminal justice program. And I did that for a year and a half till finally they changed the position. And then they made me a full-time instructor in addition to, well, I should say I was a full-time instructor when I was state program coordinator, but I taught 3 classes at a time. Now I teach 5, and most of those classes were 11-week classes. Now they're, of course, changed to 5.5 and 6 for the bachelor program. So I've been here at Rasmussen working with and helping students all those years. And I find myself consistently reaching out to students to remind you that I want you to be ethical, professional, and educated criminal justice individuals. Because of what happened with me personally, I want you guys to be even better. And there's a whole lot more to the story, but I will stop it right here to let you know that it is important for you to understand why I am so much, as they say, a stickler for professionalism, for performing well and doing your job well. And I think that should start right here in the classroom. And I set the example myself as your professor. And so now I'm a pastor and I do this job as well. And I help students do a lot of other different things. I have helped students who have continued to reach out to me long after finishing my classes for letters of recommendation to help them along. Friends on Facebook, again, people who wanted to do that, they just go to Richard Wright JD, and that's how I am on Facebook. And I accept friend requests. So that's it for me for tonight. Again, I told you this was going to be longer. Actually went 45 minutes longer than I planned, but it's because I took so much detail going over the material. But this is a recording that you can save and you'll have it. And I hope that you understand where I'll be coming from for these next 5.5 weeks. And I can tell you, every student who's had me will tell you, I've heard the story from Professor Wright, and I totally get where he's coming from. So with that, I'm going to give you a key phrase. And the key phrase I want you to use to get your points is adversity is the springboard to success. Give me the whole thing, put it in the drop down box, and you'll get your points. And so with that, I'm going to say good night again. I'll see you next Wednesday at the same time. We will not ever go this long again. But again, I hope that you um, uh, benefited from what I've shared with you. So with that, I'm going to say uh, good night. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Adversity is the springboard to success. It's in your announcements. I talked about that earlier. Okay, so again, thank you guys, Elena, Andrea, uh, Asia, Jasmine, Jenna, Jessica, and Marissa. Again, I hope you guys have a good night. Stay safe, and just remember, I'm with you. So let's get this thing done. All right. Good night. See you next week.